Hi guys, this is Jenny, and I am back for another video for the Crafters Workshop YouTube channel, and I'm also going to post this on my blog. I am doing a little fun project for November because now that Halloween is over, I thought I would go ahead and get ahead for the next holiday. And so I decided I wanted to make little name place cards for our Thanksgiving dinner. And what I thought I would do is to use these little cards and this leaf stencil and a lot of these gold modeling pastes. Those are the 4 different golds: champagne gold, antique gold, copper penny, and Grecian gold. And those are by far my favorite. I thought I might use some distress inks, but in the end I didn't. I also have these mixed media transfer foils, and I've got the new hot foil gel that is from the Crafters Workshop that I'm going to use for the first time too. And I'm going to use that for the individual letter for each person's initial for the place card. I may use some of those little clothespins. I'm not quite sure yet. And this is also so that's the leaf stencil I'm going to use the majority of. And I believe it's a new size. I believe it's a 5x7. And it's really nice and subtle. And I thought it would be small enough to make an impact without making it too busy. Because I wanted to keep the colors very neutral and lots of browns and golds and things like that. So I was going to put this on the cards on both sides, and then one side will have the initial in this font. It's I believe it's called the Art Deco alphabet, and there's numbers for it too. I'm going to use this cream colored cardstock for my cards that I've got, and I've measured them out and decided how many I'm going to use. I may use this stencil here. I actually end up using the 6x6 one of this for another little detail that I add to it, to just to give a little bit of background for something that I clip onto the front of the card. The cards themselves measure, well, this is a piece that I had left over from a while ago. I had used my silhouette, and I thought it would be a cute fall card, obviously. Sort of punny and make it a shaker card, or maybe just have like have a shadow and have it relief, sort of over another color cardstock behind it, or paint it. But I may save that for another day. So I'm going to use my new Tim Holtz tonic trimmer to trim up all of the pieces of this cream cardstock, and I believe it is a maybe like a 3x4, 3.5x4 inch, and then it's creased in the middle at 2 inches. So I go ahead and cut all of those out, and I think I needed maybe 12 or 13. I made some extras, which was a good idea since you never know when you mess up, and that did in fact happen. So I used my Martha Stewart score buddy to score score panel to score everything down the middle, and then I didn't have to make you sit through all of those because there was a lot of them. So now what I'm going to do is spread them out on my mat, and I thought it would be smart to go ahead and score them first so that I wouldn't mess up the paste, and they could dry as is later. So I lay them all out, and I'm going to just go all the way across with the stencil until I get it all filled up, and then I'll move down a little bit. It takes me several passes, but you'll see how that works. So I go ahead and decide to open all of the colors I'm going to use and set them off to the side, and then I start sort of in an ombre pattern where I'll start with the champagne gold, and then I believe it's Grecian gold, and then the antique gold, and then finally the copper penny. And I lay that out there. I didn't adhere the cards down with anything. I just sort of held it in place with my hands, which I'm kind of surprised it worked out that way. But I just ran it over and then went through all 4 of those colors. And, you know, in hindsight, the first few of each stenciling that I did after I had cleaned it was really crisp and good, obviously. And, you know, then my finger got in the way and there were some little smudges. Some of that gets covered up, which is easy to do with the letter piece that I'm going to put on top of it. But actually, I stopped there, went off and washed it really good and dried it so I could start over, so I didn't keep transferring any more of the paste onto the rest of the cards that were nice and clean. And I think I washed it one more time. So I'm going to continue with that all the way across. And then I actually flip the, I believe I flipped the stencil 180 degrees so that I can start with the copper penny and work backwards. I'm not quite sure if that's what I actually do. It might have been better if I had done these in smaller groups, but I wanted to try and fit it all into the screen at the same time. So, right, so there I go with that's the copper penny. And then the places where it mixed together underneath one leaf is so pretty. I kind of wish I had done a little bit more of that instead of trying to keep them too separate. And you see I got a big glop on that. I think that's one of the reasons I had extras, which was good. And also I used some of that. I used the ability to cover up some of that with the piece that goes on top of that. So I finish up all of those cards and I let them dry. I end up letting them dry overnight because I have to let the hot foil gel dry overnight. But they don't take too terribly long to dry. I tried to clean up a little bit of that paste and stuff, but it just, it was a little bit too late for some of that. So I put all those away and I'm going to set that aside. And I start to get this next step, which is to take a light colored cardstock. It's not the Desert Storm from Nina, but it's close. It's not a dark Kraft. It's a very light Kraft. And I have this one stitched rectangular die, and I make a million passes to go through and make, and I made a lot of extras for this, which is a really good thing because I did need them. So I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but I do make a pile of these little rectangles that are going to fold over the top of the place card, and that will have the initial in it. So I thought that would be a nice match. The dark cardstock was too dark, and I just wanted something a little bit different. So what I'm going to do now is kind of, well, here I have to write out who all we need. We have a lot of S's in our family. I maybe should have gone back and tried to add something else or done a little bit, maybe a second initial for the S, but we'll just figure it out. So I take all my cards and then I go ahead and score them too at the halfway point. And once I have those all ready together, I am going to do this hot foil gel. It comes in a little 2-ounce jar. It's this new product from the Crafter's Workshop, and it's actually designed for using in a laminating machine. So when you put it on, it's white, and then it dries clear, and that's how you know it's completely dry, when it is completely clear. And that's when you would put it through a laminating machine. So I just used my little spatula and added each of the initials on the part that would be the front part of this fold over piece, and set those off while I continue through the rest of all of the pieces. I'm not sure if it's the kind of thing like if it's embossing powder or embossing ink, where if you get a little bit of it on there, it will continue to keep that. And so even if there's a teeny tiny little smudge, when you put the embossing powder on and heat it up, that smudge would show up. I don't know if this hot foil gel is the same kind of thing, because you'll see when I pull out a lot of the final product after I heat it with the laminator, it does have a few places where it kind of got messy, and I don't know if that's because I wasn't as neat with the letter. I mean, I didn't go overboard, but it might be a little bit something on the background of the stencil. That's obviously something that you kind of need to play with, and this was the first time I'd used this product. I did end up figuring out to cut my my foil down as small as possible to put it through my laminating machine. So now I've got those all lined up, and I let them dry overnight completely. So here we are the next day. You can see where the initial is, but it is completely clear. So I'm using my MINC on the number 3 setting, and I just use a piece of, I couldn't find my carrier paper, which is funny because I just reorganized everything. Apparently I lost that. And I put a piece of this copper foil on top of each letter. And I just do a couple at a time, and then I'm going to let them sit for just a second before I peel them off. And you'll see in a second when I do peel that off, see, I'm left with a lot of this foil on parts of the part where I didn't have any of the gel. And so I'm not sure if, like I said, I'm not sure if that's part of it or what. I did try to scrape off a little bit of the ones that weren't as bad, but I did end up having to redo about 5 of them. And I did kind of get smart and cut much smaller pieces of the foil, so there was less chance that it would go over onto any other parts of that piece of Kraft cardstock. So I just continued this with the copper, and I believe I do use some of the gold. I thought the copper would be best because it would kind of stand out a little bit more. I can't remember whether I used the gold or not. This color, it's from Thermoweb and Rebecca Meyer, and it's called, the copper is New Penny, I believe. And then the gold, which is a really pale gold, is, I think it's called Old Gold. It's hard to say a lot of. So these start turning out better, and I start having less, if any, additions of, foil on the side. And those ones I do have, I just kind of use my craft pick there and kind of scrape a little bit off, and then use my eraser and just kind of try to really lightly get the rest of it off. So that seems to work for just about a little bit more than half of them. And so those are the ones at the top that were really bad that you see I need to go back and redo, which is a great thing to have extra, pieces that I cut from the beginning, so I didn't have to get that out, recut pieces, put them back through the Big Shot. So I had those extras there. And I go ahead and redo those real quickly. Actually, I had to stamp those out, and I let them dry while I pretty much finished everything else, and then go back and get them. I didn't let that set dry overnight, and it didn't make that much of a difference. So sitting around looking at this, I decide what I'm going to do is to stitch on my sewing machine through the top of it to kind of adhere it. So I just put a little bit of this, it's the Tonic, it's a giant glue pen. It's like a huge giant marker. And it kind of goes on bluish and then dries clear too. So I put that on the back of each of those and lined up the center fold where they will fold over. And I just put a little bit on the end. I didn't want to have to put any in the middle where it would run over my sewing machine. So once those are all dry, I go off to my sewing machine. I didn't show that on here. And stitch through all of those. And then I took a cut file from my silhouette, and I shrunk it down a good bit and just made several groups of these little groups of leaves. So I kind of sized them to where they would be a little bit smaller than the letter, and it would be something I could have on the side. So I just did that using a plain white cardstock. And once I get all those cut out and set there, I'm going to use that smaller scale text stencil. I had thought I might use the 12 by 12, but I wanted to kind of change the scale up of the stencils, like have the leaves be a little bit more far apart, and then have these a little bit closer together. And I think that kind of keeps it a little bit dynamic instead of having a lot of the same stencil shapes that are the same kind of size all the way through it. So I just let those sit there, and I use my Distress ink and black soot and foam applicator and go through around all of those leaves. I end up only using the bigger leaves, but I did them all. And then once those are dry, I start to think they're a little bit stark. I wanted the white because I thought it would brighten it up a bit, but I didn't want it to be too white. And at this point, I didn't want to paint it, and I decided to take my Distress ink in, I believe it is in the tea dye, which is one of my favorite colors, and I used it to just run around the edges of it. And it kind of was a little bit sloppy because, you know, I mean, I'm just doing it with my fingers, but I like the way it looked. It came out, you know, great. It kind of matches the color of the leaves and the Kraft cardstock, and just roughens it up a bit without having to make it too distressed looking. So those are the ones I'd picked out that were larger. And then I'm just going to go through each of the cards and add one of the leaves to the side of it. And then I kind of mess around to try to decide which way I'm going to use the clothespins and whether I want to use the natural color or the black little mini clothespin. So I decide on using the natural one. I end up turning it to the side, and I do end up using some little mini glue dots underneath, just like a corner of the leaf to secure it down. I think I come back after that and do that because I was afraid that maybe that might get knocked off or something like that. And it gives it a little bit of weight and sort of have to keep them in place. I'm not sure whether we're going to have Thanksgiving at my house or maybe my sister-in-law's or my mother-in-law's, but I thought this would be a fun thing to take either way. And my daughter and I did this one year at Christmas and used little stamps, and so they're cute because we use them every year, even though she was a lot younger. And here is the final product. Those are the close-ups there. I'm really happy with the way they turned out, even though there's a couple places you can see that, were sloppy. I think it looks great. It's a little rustic. And there I've got a little place setting set with each of the place cards in front of it. Thanks so much for stopping by. Make sure that you click on the subscribe button for more Crafters Workshop videos, and a complete list of supplies will be in the description below. Also check out the other videos that we have shown below, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.